Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and children of all ages, today we are going through a special journey where we, as a group, will scrape the bottom of the barrel that is BreadTube and discuss the Serfs times, or the Serf times. Who cares how it's pronounced? Who cares about this channel? But for long-term viewers of my channel, you know that this whole back and forth, and by back and forth I mean Lance talking nonsense about me for 8 or 9 months now, started when this guy decided that it was a good idea to make a video about Michael Brown. Now, anybody who's seen my channel knows that if you're wrong about Michael Brown, I will make a video showing that you're wrong about Michael Brown. And when I made my response video to the Serfs, who was looking up Wikipedia versions of media accounts that were misconstruing the information, the Serf saw that, he did like a reaction to it, and by reaction to it, I mean borderline fair use violation, where he watched in awe as I disassembled every single point that he put forward, and then he embarrassingly, out of shame, took his video down. So basically, what happened was, I saw something on the internet, I raised thy hand, snapped thy finger, and it was gone. It was an exercise in power, it was intoxicating, it also scared me a bit, because if this hand was that powerful, I started to think what would happen if it fell into the wrong hands. What would happen if I decided to use thy power for evil? But regardless, that never happened, and the world moved on, except for Serfs, who immediately did a reaction, and then I called into a show, and we had a conversation that jumped into a bunch of different topics. So there was a debate, the Serfs was incredibly embarrassing in that debate, and since that debate, the Serfs has been going on to anybody who would listen and making up things about what I might have said, or maybe he actually thinks that I did say these things because he's Dunning-Krugered himself into that mindset. But regardless, I've been letting it go for like 8 months because honestly, who cares about the bottom of the barrel when it comes to BreadTube? However, recently I put out a Richard Wolff video. It was elegant, it was beautiful, everyone enjoyed it, and then the Serfs decided that he was going to do a reaction to it. And although I thought at first that maybe I should respond to this reaction, in the beginning, he started getting all high and mighty about a second Mike Brown video that he made that supposedly was too good for me to respond to.
There was, of course, an initial video that I had made as a response to a PragerU video, and he called me out for several of the things. I wanted to correct some of the mistakes I made, and I re-released that video, and I haven't heard any commentary on the secondary release. I guess things were a little too rock solid on that front.
So of course, I decided to look into this second Michael Brown video to respond to it.
And in my quest to debunk PragerU videos, I have recently debunked, or did not debunk it successfully, as you'll find out through the course of this video, one on Michael Brown and the incidents in Ferguson that led to the development of the Black Lives Matter movement. Now, that video that I originally did is problematic for a handful of reasons, which is why I have taken it down off the channel, because again, I don't want my videos to hurt the cause of leftism in any way, and I also want to be accountable to both the people who watch my videos and the people who watch these streams.
Now, needless to say, this video isn't very good. The first part of this video is just him reading from the Department of Justice report, which I read in my video and I reference every time I talk about Michael Brown, and it's ironclad, bulletproof forensic evidence that justifies Darren Wilson's actions in that shooting beyond any shadow of a doubt, with a sad look on his face. He doesn't dispute anything of consequence from my video or anything important or relevant like that. But what he does do is talk about how I'm supposedly a hypocrite because I didn't bring up the second Department of Justice report, which was on the ticketing practices of the Ferguson Police Department.
What was strange to me, though, was that he forgot to mention the second Department of Justice report, which you would think is a little bit crucial when it comes to this entire thing, especially if we're going to be talking about Black Lives Matter and whether or not any of this was justified, or the outrage was justified, or the protests themselves are justified.
Now remember, he didn't bring this up in his original video either. The video was about Michael Brown's case. So I did a response based on, wait for it, Michael Brown's case and the report that Serfs didn't bother to read related to that case. But he very smugly and repeatedly throughout this video implies that I did something sneaky.
For someone who is so bent on facts and figures, of which he only refers to one Department of Justice document, he seems to be ignoring the causality, why it is that so many black people are arriving in prison, why it is that they are overwhelmingly accounting for the high levels of prison population.
When he is completely changing the subject, which in and of itself is incredibly sneaky. And this is a tactic the Serfs uses all the time. This is what he does. It's his only brand move, to change the subject when he's backed into a corner and he's wrong. Like, he should have just opened this video and said straight up, Sean was 100% right, that's why I took down the video. But instead he gives this like weaselly, like, oh, there were actually people on the left that weren't satisfied with my video nonsense, to mix in with the fact that he took it down because my video was superior. It beat his video point for point, and he had nothing to do to respond to it besides take down the video in shame. But instead, he does things like this. So he's like, oh, you didn't talk about the ticketing practices, blah, 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 blah.
I mean, if we were going to use one side of the coin and say the initial forensic evidence and Department of Justice investigation into Michael Brown proved that he, in fact, was not as innocent as everyone was purporting, that he did not, in fact, say hands up, don't shoot, if all that is true, then can we also acknowledge the second Department of Justice report that came out at the exact same time? By the way, it's not as if these came out wildly separated from each other, and it's like, oh, well, I just kind of ignore that one because it happened years and years later.
What does that have to do with Michael Brown? Where was that in your original video if you think it's hypocritical for you to talk about Michael Brown without talking about the ticketing practices? Also, if you're going to link this report to the Black Lives Matter movement forming, then you need to explain why this report, like the Brown report, came out the next year after the shooting, but the riots and protests and the unrest started same day that Michael Brown was killed. Or you could show me a video of somebody at one of these Michael Brown protests saying, hands up, don't shoot, but also, Ferguson Police Department, we feel it's unfair that we are being ticketed disproportionate to our population for things like jaywalking and speeding, but not to our levels of crime. Where are those signs? They don't exist because that wasn't what BLM was about, and that wasn't what the unrest in Ferguson was about. So that's completely irrelevant, Serfs. Nice try, it's embarrassing. Also, on top of that, he keeps using this black people are 67% or 66% of the Ferguson population, and yet they are ticketed at like 96% or 93% depending on the stat, as if that gap equals racism, a classic racism of the gaps argument, when we know throughout looking at any major city that disparities between population and crime are the norm, not the exception. Remember, New York City's population is around 40 to 50% Hispanic or black, but if you go to the shooting stats from any given year in the past 20 years, you will find not one single year where they represent less than 94% of the shooting suspects in New York City. So disproportionate crime to population is not something atypical that we would expect. But that's just one example of the Serfs moving the goalpost, changing the subject, being incredibly deceptive, and or possibly Dunning-Krugering his way into hearing something that he thinks I said that I didn't say. Another thing that the Serfs always does every time he mentions me is he calls me a race realist.
But we did end up having some debates and, you know, for better or for worse, we got to learn some things about the wonderful world of race realism. Actual Justice Warrior is a race realist, by the way. Sean Fitzgerald is similar. He's also a race realist.
Which is really strange because I don't believe I've ever been called that in public before. And it's even more strange because the conversation portion that he bases calling me a race realist on is a portion where I agreed with him. Let me play you the clip from the debate.
So the Human Genome Project has mapped out the entirety of the human sequence of DNA, and what we found from that is there isn't actually a genetic variable that we can attribute to race.
So what the Serfs was saying right there, to paraphrase a little bit, is that there are no hard lines between racial or ethnic groups in the way that we classify them. Perfect example of this is Barack Obama, who's half black and half white, yet we consider him black just based on his appearance, even though he is equal parts both. Kamala Harris, another example of this. She is considered a black woman by the media, even though she's half Indian, which would make her, if you're in the UK, like half Asian. Even though in the United States of America, we don't refer to Indians as Asians. It's a whole thing. I don't want to get into it. But point being that there's no real dividing line, especially in those edge cases, in which we can accurately define somebody in a scientific way. That is the social construct aspect of race. And this is a point, by the way, that I agreed with, and I stated it back to him.
Genetic variable that we can attribute to race.
Yeah, I understand that there's no hard line, but there are genetic characteristics, hair color, eye color, skin color, that we see and we call race.
Right. So what you're doing in that case is you're attributing a handful of qualities to people to try and categorize them that don't actually exist. So the idea that a certain amount of melanin in your skin can actually, oh no, that all exists. But the idea that then makes you a fake idea or a concept of race, right?
Because we both know what we're talking about when we're talking.
Well, I think it's an uncomfortable conversation because you might not like going around this kind of road, but I understand why.
Different word for it, then that's fine. But we both know what each other are talking about. Like, yeah, I'm not saying that there's a hard line between black, white, Asian, South Asian or whatever. Now, at the time, I thought the Serfs understood what I was saying, and I think the part where he may have gotten tripped up is later in the conversation where I pointed out, well, you are asserting that there is racism against black people. You are expressing support for a movement called Black Lives Matter. I am talking about black crime, so we understand to a certain extent what these categories mean for the purposes of this conversation. So it's really weird 30 minutes in or whenever he brought it up for him to say that these things don't exist, but then to go on and talk about anti-black racism in the United States of America, specifically in reference to law enforcement.
What I'm saying is those things don't actually exist. They were invented by the white race in order to characterize people into different classifications. What I'm saying is those things don't actually exist. They were invented by the white race. They were invented by the white race.
And for some reason, that got garbled in his Dunning-Kruger brain into him being able to think that it's appropriate to say race realist, race realist, race realist, when again, if he agrees with me, or if I agreed with him on his base position, that would make him a race realist as well. But wait, there's more, because there's always more. Now, to be perfectly fair, I understand why the Serfs was a little bit shook. I made a video about him, he had to take it down in embarrassment, and coming on my channel in order to debate me was a big moment where he could restore some of his pride. So I understand him not really listening, misconstruing what I say, and not really understanding and being able to follow along, because he was in a highly emotional state during the course of our conversation. However, there's one lie about me that he keeps repeating that I don't understand, because he'll use clips of me saying what I'm actually saying in videos and then continue to misrepresent my position. For instance, and this is going to sound super weird if you weren't following this along, the Serfs is under the impression that I made the case that black people not using condoms comparatively to other ethnic groups was somehow related to biology of black people.
He likes to blame a lot of the problems that happen to the black community on things that aren't real, such as the fact that he thinks they wear condoms less, and that's why there's so many black families that grow up without fathers. That's an actual thing he said in a debate I had with him, that the reason for that is because they don't wear condoms. Super pseudoscientific racist nonsense, which turns out not even to bear fruit.
I know that sounds stupid, but he's been making this case over and over again, despite the fact that he doesn't know what he's talking about.
People are getting pregnant before they graduate high school, like a bunch of reasons.
No, but why is that happening to black households? Why do black households have that high rate?
I mean, you have the breakdown of the family. You have a bunch of different factors. We set up a system where women are incentivized to not marry the father of their kid. Black people, on average, are less likely to use condoms, so they're more likely to have unplanned pregnancies. Again, there's a bunch of things that are leading to this, and this is a long-term trend. It's been happening, I think, since the 60s.
Mm-hmm. And there's no reason why they would be doing that as opposed to the white population. Like, why are black people in particular not using condoms?
So there's the clip in question. And remember, although that is from a conversation that he and I had, I believe I was in his Discord talking to him, he took the time to clip this specific portion out of that conversation so that he could respond to it in this video. So bare minimum, he would have had to have heard this twice. Once when he listened to it when I first said it, and another time when he clipped it out to put it in this video, right? We all agree on that. We all understand that. Maybe a third time if you reacted to this live after clipping it a separate time, but at least twice. We can all agree on that. And in there, I was talking about fatherlessness, and I was linking it to high school condom use.
People are getting pregnant before they graduate high school.
So we're talking about teen pregnancy. That is the topic. You understand? And Serfs is asking me why.
And there's no reason why they would be doing that as opposed to the white population. Like, why are black people in particular not using condoms?
Repeatedly. Why? It's a Vosh tactic. It's really annoying, but that's the context around this clip. Now look at the way that Serfs responds to that.
And he presented me with a document in order to prove that. And this was the study that I took a look at. Condom refusal and young black men, the influence of pleasure, sexual partners, and friends. The study investigated pleasure-related, partner-related, and social normative correlates of recent condom refusal in young black men. A cross-sectional study attending clinics treating sexually transmitted diseases in 3 cities was conducted. The median age was 19.6 years. Nearly 1 of every 2 young men indicated the recent refusal to use a condom after request from their partner. Significant findings included the following partner-related beliefs. I feel closer to my partner without a condom. If this is the evidence that you're going to be proposing, so this is the way that you're justifying the statement that black people don't use condoms, you better hope you're using a control. You better hope that you're juxtaposing the use of condoms amongst black people and white people. Because if you're just pointing towards a study that only looks at black people, it shows you nothing.
So this is Dunning-Kruger on a maximum scale. So the Serfs is mad at me in this clip because I sent him this data on the attitudes of young black people on condom use. And he's angry because this doesn't have a comparison versus other ethnic groups, specifically white people. But the thing is, his question wasn't to prove to him that this existed statistically. If he had asked that, then I would have sent him the CDC data that I presented during our debate. So, like right here, I have percentage of women age 15 to 49 who currently using female sterilization, oral contraceptive pill, male condom, or long-lasting reversible contraceptives in the United States. And you can see it's coded. Is this one coded by race? Yeah. All right. I think it's the next chart, actually. Here we go. This one is coded by race. And you can see the green is black non-Hispanic. And this is female sterilization, which skews older, obviously, because people get sterilized when they're older. Pills, it's under. Condoms is under, which is what we were talking about. And long-lasting reversible contraceptives are under. I'll put it on screen in case you're doubtful on whether or not that's the case. He asked me the reason behind that, the why. So I sent him a study, a qualitative research paper on what the reasoning behind the decision not to use condoms was. And he looks at it and immediately shifts the goalpost, or maybe doesn't understand. Again, Dunning-Kruger or deceptive, whichever one, it's completely wrong, to an issue of this not proving it statistically. So this is like, this is proven statistically, let's find out why through the research, kind of research, and he doesn't understand, even though, again, he asked me why. So I'm answering his question, his exact question that he asked me, and he doesn't get it, or maybe he's being deceptive. Again, have no idea, you can't really figure it out with him because he doesn't present as very intelligent, but this is what I'm left with. But I'm actually going to lean towards the Dunning-Kruger effect because the next thing he did is the most Dunning-Kruger-y thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm just going to play the clip for you, and I want you guys, if you're in the live chat or you're commenting on this video, to take a moment, pause the video after you see this clip, and let me know in the comments or in the live chat whether or not you can spot what's wrong with what he's about to reference.
A new study kicks stereotypes to the curb when it comes to safe sex. We hear a lot about the higher than average rates of HIV amongst black males these days, but a new study in the San Francisco State University finds that black men are actually using condoms more often than their white male peers. Here's what researchers had to say. Black gay men who face the highest risk of HIV infection rarely discuss using protection, but they tend to use it by default. It was just understood, regardless of whether the partner's status. White couples, on the other hand, tended not to use condoms, often evaluating the risk of infection based on health and the viral load of the HIV-positive partner.
Yes, that is a real clip from the same video. That is a study that he brought up in response to me talking about teenage pregnancy. He brought up the condom use of gay black males.
Black gay men.
People are getting pregnant before they graduate high school.
Black gay men.
That's a thing that's in his video as a serious rebuttal to my point. It is the most Dunning-Kruger thing I've ever seen in my entire life. It's embarrassing, and honestly, I don't really have a good way to respond to this other than this guy does not have a base level understanding of the words that are coming out of my mouth. Again, this is the clip of me that he played. This was the topic that we were talking about, And this was his response.
People are getting pregnant before they graduate high school.
Black gay men who face the highest risk of HIV infection rarely discuss using protection, but they tend to use it by default.
He brought this up live during our debate as well, and it was just embarrassing for me to have to interact with somebody who couldn't understand the basics of the conversation that we were actually having. On top of that, he brought up another study about how black men age 40 and up typically use condoms more than white men age 40 and up, ignoring the fact that the reason behind that is that black men age 40 and up are significantly less likely to be married at that point than their white counterparts. And again, age 40 and up, not really relevant when we're talking about high school and teen pregnancy, as was shown in the original clip that the Serfs himself, again, had to see at least 2 times before featuring it in one of his videos. What do I do with this? Like, how do I have a conversation about somebody who is this far off the plane? There's nothing I can do. It's like an unbridgeable gap. What am I supposed to say? People have been asking me to do, ever since our debate, more response videos to the Serfs. If you go to my Discord in the suggest video topics, he appears there multiple times. But like, honestly, I don't feel like it's really fair to respond to somebody who doesn't show the base ability to have a conversation. Like, he cannot literally understand the words that are coming out of my mouth, so it's kind of embarrassing for me to respond to him if he can't follow the conversation. And he's demonstrated no ability over the past 8 or 9 months to correct himself when he's been caught spreading misinformation. There are people in the comments that are like, dude, what are you saying? What are you even talking about? And obviously, he's just ignoring that, or maybe he's just not even reading it. He's not responding to any negative criticism whatsoever. So what's the point of me reacting and responding to this guy who can't understand the basics of the conversation that he was involved in, and he had extra points to re-reference it before continuing to comment on it. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it right here because there's nowhere to go forward from this point of this video, but let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you liked the video, show me by leaving a like. You can subscribe for more content. Follow me on all my social medias. You can support me via the support links in the description box of the video. There's been a lot of support lately and I really appreciate it. Subscribe for more content, almost at 100K. This has been me talking about the Serfs and his weird inability to understand what I say. Till next time.